Just ahead on Lafayette Lens, we explore two issues of critical concern to our society.
Are you dependent on devices? Technology offers great opportunities, but some challenges too.
The other issue has equal importance to us. Can fracking offer the U.S. energy independence? Will Pennsylvania play a big role in natural gas?
We'll meet some winners and potential losers in the issue, and we sit down with an ExxonMobil executive to learn more.
It all starts now on Lafayette Lens. Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Catherine Tenenbaum.
And I'm John Moores. We're students at Lafayette College, and over the last semester, our Economics and Policy class embarked on a partnership with PBS 39 to take our education out of the textbook and into society. When was the last time you used technology?
Did you get a text this morning or search the internet for sales? Our lives seem to be moving twice as fast as our parents, and being a part of the information age brings exciting opportunity, but with it comes challenges too.
Tonight on Lafayette Lens, we'll be examining the growing trends the cyber world presents and how we as a community are not only changing the way we communicate, but we're altering the way we consume and produce products. As more information moves online, people's social interactions and relationships are becoming increasingly tied to digital technology. Devices are frequently used to remove individuals from uncomfortable social scenarios with the ability to hide behind computer monitors and anonymous screen names. People can now create new personalities and relationships online.
How old were you when you got your first cell phone? We're about to meet a woman who hasn't known life without technology. Lafayette sophomore Abby Williams, a neuroscience and policy studies major, relies on her gadgets to schedule all aspects of her daily routine. We decided to give her a little test to gauge her device dependency, and we asked her to give up technology for 24 hours. Here's her story.
I got my first cell phone when I was 12 or 13, and I used it primarily just to call my parents and keep in touch with them about my whereabouts. Now that I'm in college and I have a smartphone, I still use it to call and text people, but I have email, all the different apps, social media, so a lot more variety.
24 hours can become an eternity for those without the tools they rely on to succeed, and we put her to that test.
So the day I went without technology, I woke up feeling sick, so after I went to class, I needed to cancel my meeting. And I wasn't really able to because I didn't have my cell phone. So I ended up doing a few laps in the library to try to find their friends, to somehow communicate with them. Even though we go to school on a really small campus, there's still a ton of different buildings, so it's really like finding a needle in a haystack. Another aspect of life that I struggled with when I didn't have technology was just keeping time. I don't wear a watch, so it seems really trivial that without technology I didn't know what time it was because there are clocks around. I do realize that technology has a time and a place, so I try to put my cell phone away at meals with friends and family so I can like actively engage in those conversations and relationships. So at the end of the day, I have a love-hate relationship with technology because it helps my life in many ways. I, at least, sometimes become a prisoner to the same technology that helps me out.
Who are you in cyberspace? Some people even seem to have alternative personalities online. To help us understand the impact of communicating electronically, joining us now is Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, renowned professor and researcher at the Positive Emotions and Psychophysiology Lab at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Dr. Fredrickson is a contributor to the New York Times and most recently authored Love 2.0. Now, Dr. Fredrickson, first of all, thank you for coming.
Oh, it's good to be here.
Now, you've done a lot of research on our social interactions, but with the ever-growing internet, there's a lot of electronic alternatives, be it through Facebook, Twitter, or even now online dating. Do you think these sites will have an effect on our face-to-face interactions when we do them in person?
Right. Well, we all have a biological capacity to connect with others, and that capacity is really geared toward, reading facial expressions, tuning into the human voice, and when we interact in ways that don't use those same skills, we potentially are eroding those skills. And so what we know is that this biological capacity to connect obeys a use it or lose it kind of law, in the same way that if we lead a sedentary life, we lose our muscles atrophy and we lose physical strength. If we change to having most of our interactions be not using the same skills of reading faces and tuning into the voice, then we lose those skills for compassion, empathy, and social engagement.
Now, what do you think makes the younger generation more comfortable with these communications behind the computer screen as opposed to face-to-face in person?
Well, face-to-face in-person interactions, they're difficult and challenging sometimes. And some people find the appeal of being able to think through how they're going to present themselves as especially appealing. It gives them a greater sense of control. And so, but the more people do that, though, the more they feel like that's their strength, is presenting themselves in this sort of edited way rather than just diving into the richness of a face-to-face conversation.
Now, for parents who may have some of these younger kids using a lot of these electronic devices to do these communications, besides just restricting the amount of time they can use on their phone or laptop, is there another positive action parents can take?
Well, I think even just encouraging people to get on the phone and actually speak voice to voice, again, uses some of the skills that are potentially not used when dealing with texting and abstract words on a screen. So even encouraging people to go back and use phones the old-fashioned way and picking up the phone and talking to somebody can be a good benefit. And it's really a balance. I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with connecting with people over media. It's just a matter of opportunity cost. If it becomes the only way people connect, then there's a problem. If it's supplementing and helping people set up times to meet face-to-face, then that can be a good resource. So I think it's a matter as a parent of noticing the balance and seeing if there are any opportunity costs.
Well, thank you very much for being here, Professor. We appreciate your time.
All right, thank you.
As technology has rapidly changed over the last decade, many business models have been forced to adapt to survive. According to a projection by Forrester Research Incorporated, online shoppers in the U.S. will spend $327 billion in 2016, up 45% from this year and up 62% from 2011. Websites like BizRate and NextTag allow shoppers to find the cheapest product, read thorough descriptions and reviews, as well as compare products from different companies.
Remember the days of the paperboy? Well, those days seem to be gone for good. The print editions for newspapers and magazines have been losing subscribers for years. So what does that mean for local communities? Catherine sits down with Morning Call editor Dave Erdman to share how this has cost his organization jobs and shares what he thinks the future of local print journalism will look like.
Thanks, John. Thanks for being with us, Dave. We're really happy to have you.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about how the digital age has affected job loss in your newsroom?
Yes, the digital age has affected literally everything about us. We're not the same organization we were 126 years ago, for sure. And so we were essentially a big manufacturing company, putting ink on paper. And so everything has changed about how we gather news, about how we produce. We kind of joke that we put out news all day. It's like a 24/7. We're more like a radio news operation, and we stop once a day to put out a newspaper, essentially. That's had an impact on jobs, as of course technology has affected just about every industry. So we're about half the size we were about 10 years ago in the newsroom, maybe a little less so. Infrastructure change, our manufacturing operation has become leaner and very different.
Okay. How many jobs? Could you give us a number just to clarify?
Yes, absolutely. So the Morning Call was an operation of in excess of about 900. It's about half that now, so it's just under 500.
Wow. Can you tell us how this job loss has affected the community, how the community is getting their information?
Well, the way we deliver news today is the newspaper still is the #1 source and still is actually the #1 source of our revenue. We do receive digital revenue now, but we look at content delivery just on multiple channels. So people are receiving the news in different ways that they want it today. It could be an app, it could be a newspaper, it could be videos we produce. But essentially, so we've honed in on our focus, our sweet spot, which is really local. And before we were trying to be, throughout the years, newspapers would be everything, including international news, national news, which we provide, but we've really honed in our sweet spot, and we do local.
You do local, you do everything. So do you think that's how you're getting your reader to keep on reading? You're bringing it all together into one?
Yes, absolutely. And so, as things have changed, we have a readership and a web audience now, and an app audience, a digital audience. Combined, we're still reaching 70% of our market over the Lehigh Valley. So 70% combined through all kinds of different media.
Wow. Well, it looks like there's been a lot of changes in your industry. Thank you so much for being with us today and taking the time to talk with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Harrisburg is considering legislation that would allow Pennsylvania citizens to register to vote online. But is it beneficial to have a society whose democracy is entrusted with technology? Here now to analyze this pressing issue are Ed O'Brien and Tim Simon.
Thanks, John. So Tim, with this new legislation being considered, would you allow for online registration and voting to be implemented in the state of Pennsylvania?
Well, online registration is already implemented into the technology systems through other forms of registration, IRS, but it's been subject to fraud. So my biggest concern is obviously fraud. How we are going to go forward as far as allowing constituents to register is going to be a huge point, but also to protect against that and to set up the necessary legislation so that issues will not be ran into is the biggest concern I have.
See, I think one of the biggest benefits of this online registration process is that we've seen that it works. Numerous states across the country have implemented this, and if you're concerned about fiscal economics or for a state government, this is going to save taxpayers 80 cents for every new registrant that we have. Currently, it costs 83 cents to process a mail-in registration application, but now it only costs 3 cents. So we're going to see massive amounts of savings in our state government and how we can better make this process more fluid. So I guess if your biggest concern is fraud, then when do you draw the line with technology?
I think research, due diligence as a consumer is the most important thing to realize. I think as a voter myself, I always try to do as much research as possible. Educating yourself is the best education. So when you have this technology available, how you decide to use it is the most important thing. Whether or not you choose to use information as a weapon, as a politician, or as a worker to use it as a way to vote is
Do you like donating online?
Do I like donating online? I've never donated online.
Okay.
Have you donated online?
I have. Numerous times I've donated online. And I think that it creates a much simpler and more fluid process again. It only takes a couple clicks to donate, a couple $100s to a candidate.
Right, I realize that, but also as far as where's the money coming from, we have concerns of overseas donations coming in the last election. How do we know where this money is coming from? Are these actual U.S. citizens donating this money? How are elections going to be manipulated in the future through donations overseas or online for that matter? How do we know where it's coming from?
That's very true. I mean, the Government Accountability Institute discovered that almost half of all congresspeople, senators, and representatives don't have simple security measures such as CVVs, those 3-digit codes or 4-digit codes in the back of credit cards, to implement and make sure that we have safeguards and our protection. So that's obviously a big thing that we're going to have to look forward to. But I still think that one of the key reasons why the Obama campaign won nationally in the presidential election was that they had such a better technological system. And so, hopefully, that can be a future model. And so I think that we can both agree that this is just the tip of the iceberg. On behalf of Tim Simon, I'm Ed O'Brien, and this has been Student Showdown.
Technology not only determines how we power our lives, but it becomes the catalyst for finding the balance between fueling the future and protecting our environment.
Today, it looks as if Americans have to choose between conserving the environment and protecting their own wallets. The Marcellus Shale accounts for nearly 75% of Pennsylvania and has been recognized as a gold mine for natural gas.
It could have the potential to make the U.S. a global leader in natural gas production and to provide a solution to our stagnant economy. But many are opposed to the actual process of extracting this resource, also known as fracking, claiming that it is hazardous for the environment and for our well-being.
Tonight on Lafayette Lens, we will investigate the local effects of the fracking boom and the future of fracking in the Marcellus Shale.
The Marcellus Shale has made Pennsylvania a major player in natural gas production. And with 846 active wells, Williamsport, Lycoming County, is becoming called the energy capital of the state.
Williamsport, with a population of around 30,000, is the 7th fastest growing metropolitan area in the country, according to Bureau of Economic Analysis data released last year. We asked Mayor Campana how fracking has changed the region from his point of view, and he said, quote, "If we didn't have the fracking, our unemployment would be double what it is now. I am pro-natural gas, it's pro-American, and pro-clean energy, and for me, I look at fracking as a good thing." End quote. A prime example of a local company benefiting from fracking is Ritu Incorporated. Laura Templeton is the regional manager of their Williamsport office.
So in 2008, we began investigating the Marcellus Shale. We went to Houston. We talked with companies that were interested in coming to Pennsylvania. We explained our background and skill. We had worked on some pipeline projects. And because of our taking the risk and getting involved in the industry very early, we were able to not only survive the downturn in the economy, but actually double the size of our company. We didn't do any acquisitions. We hired people, and we were able to increase our revenues from $20-some million to, in 2011, about $63 million, and we've continued to increase it from there. But we are right in the heart of the Marcellus play, as I said, and also we're a solid urbanized area right in the middle of the transportation infrastructure with good highway network and a good regional airport that will help as a transportation hub throughout the whole Marcellus play across Pennsylvania. So we've been very fortunate geographically with our transportation network as well as geologically where we're located. So that's really what has been the key to making us the energy capital of Pennsylvania.
In spite of all this, most of us are still unsure about the actual process behind fracking, also known as hydraulic fracturing. We will now turn to Lafayette Junior Kelsey Gula, who is here with a special guest.
Thanks, Catherine. I'm here with Professor James Ferry, the Department Head of Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering at Lafayette College. Now, Professor Ferry, could you break down the process of fracking into a couple steps so that I can get a better handle of what it actually entails?
Sure, Kelsey. So, hydraulic fracturing or fracking is the process by which water with a few additives is pumped into a shale formation, cracking the rock and improving the extraction of crude oil and natural gas.
Okay, so what does this process look like?
So first, a well is drilled vertically down into the soil up to depths between 6,000 and 10,000 feet. And once it reaches the payload, then that well is extended horizontally over a much wider range.
Why is horizontal drilling important?
So because of horizontal drilling, a surface pad of only about 6 acres can be used to explore and develop a subsurface formation that extends for up to 6,000 acres. Now, as that well is drilled, a metal casing is inserted, which isolates the well from its environment, which helps minimize the environmental impact.
So this is all drilling. Where does fracking come in?
Well, within the shale formation, that metal casing is perforated with small holes or apertures so that when fracking fluid is pumped in, it exits those apertures at high pressure, cracking the rock. So when the hydraulic pressure is released, the flowback water flows back into the well and is removed, and then crude oil or natural gas, if it's present in the treated area, flows out and can be collected.
I see. I think I have a clearer picture of what fracking is all about. Thank you, Professor Ferry.
Sure thing.
Natural gas fracking has the potential to be the main energy source of the future, but could it also be the answer to our economic problems? Steve Pryor is Vice President of ExxonMobil and an alumnus of Lafayette College. Dan DeSena, a junior economics major at Lafayette, spoke with Mr. Pryor about the economic impact of the fracking industry, where this money is going, and what this means for the Lehigh Valley.
What does hydraulic fracking mean for the state of Pennsylvania?
Well, for Pennsylvania, it has been an absolute game changer. You know, if you think about the national economy, we're still struggling with very low growth, very high unemployment. Yet in Pennsylvania last year, there was double-digit job growth. And thanks to natural gas production, shale gas, there are 100,000 jobs in this state that have been supported by the industry, and they're good paying jobs. By the end of the decade, that's going to grow to over 200,000 jobs, and for the government, it's meant $3 billion last year in taxes and revenues. So it is a huge deal for the Pennsylvania economy. And as an industry, we're committed to operating safely and to addressing those questions. But you know, the point is you have to look at what are the real facts here. The first issue is around safety. And the reality is hydraulic fracturing has been safely used for 60 years in this country. We have drilled successfully 1 million fracked wells, so it can be done safely.
How is ExxonMobil working to restore the confidence in shale gas development?
Well, it's important that people have confidence and know the facts. So we start by saying this is a safe process if you follow good industry practices. And together with a group of companies in the Marcellus Shale Coalition, we are publishing guidelines covering every aspect of oil and gas development so that we have a body of practices out there that everybody can follow and that are proven to be safe. But why should we develop our gas resources is your question. And the big picture point is this. Energy is vital to economic development. It's vital to everyday life. And by the year 2040, there's going to be a lot more people in the world, 2 billion more people, and they're going to need energy to light and heat their homes and offices and schools, power industry, and drive their automobiles.
How do you address the concerns with exporting gas as liquefied natural gas?
There are a few companies that have suggested we should restrict our exports of natural gas, that somehow we should keep it for ourselves. But the reality is we have abundant supplies of natural gas. As I said, more than 100 years worth. We have more than enough for our domestic needs, and we have enough to export.
As we continue to understand what fracking is all about, it's important to follow the money. First, fracking has created over 100,000 jobs in Pennsylvania so far, with an average salary of $97,000 compared to the state average of about $59,000. Pennsylvania fracking has contributed $389 million in state and local tax revenue. Fracking has brought in $4 billion to the state's economy. Gas companies pay landowners up to $6,000 per acre. Landowners also receive up to 12.5% in royalties of the total gross revenues.
Fracking has had an enormous impact on communities along the Marcellus Shale. Besides the economic benefits fracking can bring to a town, many families argue its negative effects can make day-to-day living difficult and hazardous to their health. To investigate, our team traveled to Hughesville in Lycoming County, right outside of Williamsport, about 2 hours away from the Lehigh Valley. We sat down with Tom and Mary Crawley to talk about their experience with fracking.
I've been here for 20 years. It's only been the past year that I've had problems with water.
After leasing some of their land to a gas company for fracking, Mr. and Mrs. Crawley noticed a change in the quality of their water due to high levels of methane.
If there's a methane buildup, what we were instructed to do is open the windows, call 911, and get out. So,
just up the road from the Crawleys, Doyle Bodle also has issues with his water. Here, he's showing us how it has stained his dishware. Mr. Bodle believes the gas companies can improve their situation with a new water filtration system.
It costs about $5,000 to put a water system here to, would eliminate the methane. And, it's 4 of us, that, that has the bad methane now. And it would seem to be better for Range to put the system in. It's $20,000. But, for the gas companies, it's just a spit in the bucket. And then, it'll be, good advertising for them because, say, we got, a problem, we take care of it. So, here's the proof. But, nothing's been done so far.
The only thing that I'm asking for is we've got a problem, somebody created it, find out who, and let's make it right.
Hope it don't take too much longer to, to have them, do something about this.
Thank you, Catherine. Joining us now is Pennsylvania State Senator Pat Brown. He has represented the 16th District, serving parts of Northampton, Lehigh, and Monroe County since 2005. Senator Brown is here with us today to tell us how fracking has affected his voters. Thank you for being here, Senator.
You're welcome. Good to be here.
Well, as for the first question, how has fracking directly or indirectly affected your constituency as well as the overall state?
I think in the most direct way to put it is in terms of a more prosperous Pennsylvania. We rely on an economic activity in order to promote our ability in state government to meet our obligations to education and human services. So the strength of the state and its ability to do that has been increased as a result of that activity and will continue.
Now, with fracking comes a lot of things. And we've heard that there may be some concerns from people on both sides of the aisle or here actually in the public. What is the most common concern that you hear from your constituents? And to those concerns, what is your response to them typically?
Well, there has been a lot of reporting regarding potential environmental impacts. And when you're talking about using natural resources, it has to be a balance. You want to garner the benefit of it, but you want to make sure the environmental impacts are minimized. So as part of our law in 2012, we greatly increased our regulatory capacity when it came to oil and gas. It's noted that for those who allow fracking, Pennsylvania's regulatory framework is the strongest in the country.
And one of the other things that make Pennsylvania a little unique is its tax system with regards to fracking. Now, for most states, from what I understand, there's a severance tax. But we've decided instead to go with this state, and I believe you voted for instead an impact tax. Could you tell us a little bit about the difference between those and why you voted for the impact tax instead?
These things are a matter of compromise. Whether it's a fee or a tax is really, from our standpoint, a matter of language. It really is how much does it raise and what does it do in relation to the government and industry. The impact fee was necessary because there are direct impacts as a result of drilling, and we wanted to raise money to counter those impacts, whether it be roads and bridges, water supply, human services, housing, and it was targeted towards that both at the local and state level. There was conversations about how high it should be. It's raising about $200 million now. The Senate would have probably liked a little more, but in the scope of governing, it was a compromise package. And as natural gas continues to grow, prices rise, there might be an opportunity to garner some more. But at this point in time, I think we have a good compromise package that will be reviewed and continue to be evaluated over time.
And as far as the taxes go with regulatory agencies, when a new industry like fracking comes in, do you think Pennsylvania is set up to be adequate as far as how they review it, but also are they pro-business? Does something will be appealing to the fracking industry?
We're trying to make sure we keep that balance. Now, the regulatory framework was not set up originally when fracking occurred. That's why we really strengthened our oil and gas laws, first time since 1984. I think we achieved an appropriate balance now. We have to keep regulators' boots on the ground to make sure they're implemented. But in the end, I think we struck an appropriate balance to make sure that we can capitalize off of this.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Senator. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
The future of fracking in the United States, while promising, is unclear.
Junior Connor Ortoff, an economics major at Lafayette College, is joining us now with two special guests.
Thanks, Catherine and John. We invited two experts to discuss the possible outcomes of moving forward with fracking the Marcellus Shale. I'd like to welcome Lafayette College professors Nicole Crane of economics and Dr. Drew Germanowski of geology. Thank you both for being with us today. And Dr. Germanowski, I'd like to begin the conversation with you. If you look down the road, say 10, 20 years, what does the future of fracking hold?
I think the future is going to involve significant expansion of natural gas markets to continue to drive the industry. Many people seem to have the impression that the natural gas boom in the United States is driven by an initiative for energy independence, but in reality, energy independence or any measure of energy independence is going to be purely coincidental. Geologists have known that there's natural gas in these shales for over a century, but we were unable to extract the natural gas from these naturally impermeable rocks. The convergence of two technologies, horizontal drilling along with hydraulic fracturing, has made it possible to bring this commodity to the market. And as I said, it's not really a drive towards energy independence, but that is a coincidental benefit.
So in terms of the U.S. markets, where do you see job growth and revenue headed?
At a national level, you're looking at so far 1.7 million jobs in 2012. In this region, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York, it's over 163,000 jobs, and it's predicted to about double by 2020. One interesting thing about it is in these times of budget shortfalls, the revenue is really an important component. So for example, last year at the federal level, revenue related to fracking more than covered the cost of the Department of Homeland Security. Closer to home in Pennsylvania, the outlays for higher education were cut back because of the economic downturn. If you allocated all fracking revenue to higher education in Pennsylvania compared to last year, this year's spending could be 188%.
Oh, that's actually unbelievable. So Professor Germanowski, in terms of infrastructure, what does this mean for fracking?
Well, in order to bring natural gas to the global market, it has to be liquefied. And so it's going to require liquefaction facilities to be developed and constructed, as well as shipping terminals to load the natural gas on ships. Once natural gas moves to the global market, I think the prices, it'll probably trade at higher prices and continue to support and drive the industry.
So you think the liquefaction of fracking will really expand the market?
I think it will expand the market and keep prices up to a point where the natural gas industry can continue to develop the resource.
Okay, well, both of you, I'd like to thank you once again for your time. Professor Crane and Professor Germanowski, we really appreciate you guys being here.
As the demand for sustainable energy increases, the issue of fracking the Marcellus Shale becomes more prevalent and more controversial. No matter what your opinion is on the issue, it is essential to have these discussions.
We hope you've learned something new tonight about how fracking and the cyber world affect the environment, the economy, and you. From all of us here at Lafayette Lens, have a great night.
Good night.